because it's kind of my fault that it hasn't happened, isn't it?
He's not interested in my story. We made a YouTube video where we made a design that we wanted to teach you how to draw. That's the exchange. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Sketchwave, our weekly show where we talk all things Procreate and digital art. And I say we because it is myself, of course, otherwise known as JoelCreate, and my co-host, the one and only James Julier. James, how are you, mate?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, it's been a fairly busy few days. I've been doing more traditional work. We keep threatening to show it, but we will. Perhaps we'll do an episode. I know you've just been showing me a hint, maybe of some traditional stuff that you do or have done in the past. Maybe we should do a bit of a traditional art episode. Maybe we could do that in the future, because that is certainly something I've been really getting into of late. I've really enjoyed doing traditional stuff. I know that most people who watch this probably are quite digitally orientated in terms of that's what we offer. But yeah, I've been really enjoying it. How about you? Have you been busy?
Mega busy.
Yeah.
I can't remember what phrase Mrs. said it's about, but I'm the type of person that, like, if I got a job to do, like, I just don't stop until it's done. Like, and my back is killing me because I decided on Saturday, it's on Sunday, I was like, I'm going to de-weed the, we've got like a gravel patio-ish area at the back of the garden. I was like, it's looking mental. It got crazy over winter. I'm like, I'm going to tackle that. And then it got all nicely done. And then, just a sporadic impulsive thing of being like late on in the afternoon, like, we could extend that. Like another just like 2 meters, 2x3, and I'm like, yeah, we could do that actually.
A little
Let's
job,
do that. Yeah. No, it's just been mental. I've been hurling half a ton of gravel in like multiple trips to the shop and back, and hurling it through the house, and you look at it and go, it's just an extra 2 meters, well done. But in reality, it's like all the work that goes into it and preparing the ground, leveling the ground, everything. So I've been doing a bit of physical stuff, but also, as we spoke about last week, released that Pokemon channel, which is cool. Just like got that going, which is fun. Just really getting the ball rolling with it, which is interesting. And at the same time, trying to juggle Procreate.
Are those episodes up?
I've got 2. Yeah.
Right, okay.
The whole time I kind of evaluated kind of how we released this channel as well, where we launched with 3 episodes. And I thought, well, I don't just want to do a video explaining what the channel is going to be about and only that. So I'll also give some substance video as well. So there's 2 already up there. So every Friday I'll be releasing a new episode. So I know it's not really for our audience, but it's just more of kind of a follow-on of the conversations that we had in the previous episode. And just managing to get Procreate in at the same time. And so tomorrow is like just going to be editing. It's going to be editing a tutorial I recorded today as well, and just like try and take it easy and get the deep heat on the back in the meantime. So it's fun. It's therapeutic though to do. We spoke so many times about doing things that are external to Procreate,
definitely.
and it's just fun to tackle something and learn. I've never laid a gravel patio area before, but I just, read all the steps to do it and did it, and it was fun to do. But it's like fun, but also, a little bit kind of creative, I guess. I don't know, all the sort of tasks involved, and it's just, the only thing it's done is just given me a bit of a blister on my thumb. So if people think I've got some boils going on in my latest videos whenever they come out, it's just a blister. So we did in a previous episode, didn't we? We did an episode where we looked back at some of the questions that have been submitted from yourselves, the audience. If you didn't already know, we have a link in the description down below to a form that you can fill out anonymously, or you can put your name to it and submit a question to the show, and we can read it out. And also just general discussion points. We want to hear from you. We want to see what you want us to talk about. It could be anything. It could be like, Joel, can you play that guitar over there? No, I can't. It's just a
I can't see something the guitar.
It's a beautiful. I'll get it now. I've mentioned it. This is because it's my dad. It used to be my dad's anyway. But it's a beautiful piece of kit. And it's my sister has one. Sorry, I'm miles away from the microphone. Sorry, my sister has one, my auntie has one, and I have one. Same guitar, but in different colours. So we all kept a guitar of his, which was cool. I can't play it. But anyway, let's move on to some questions that are a bit related to what we actually do here. Yes. First question I've got here in our list is from Dave Stone. So Dave, thank you so much for your question. You've thoroughly enjoyed the deep dives with James, Flo, Miko, O'Reilly, and would very much like to see a deep dive into Joel. Me.
Yes.
Is that a possibility?
Yes, well, I feel I should take this one because it's kind of
Go
my
for it.
fault that it hasn't happened.
There you go, Dave.
Because it's not that I don't want to do it; it's just that you are very good at presenting.
He's not interested in my story. He couldn't give any less of a toss.
You are very good at presenting, Joel, and I've lent into that and kind of become, a little bit kind of, well, Joel will do it and he's good at doing it, so I'll just let him crack on with the whole presenting stuff. Because obviously, if it's a deep dive into you, then you can't really host that one as such, can you? You can't lead the deep dive into yourself. So I'm going to have to take the reins. I'm going to have to present and introduce and really be in charge of that whole episode pretty much. Prior to doing this podcast, I'd never spoken to camera at all. And so it's been a big shift for me personally to have to talk to camera. And at the minute you can't see me, Cameron. So if this episode goes, because there's a problem with the technical problem with the camera.
On my end, yeah.
On your end.
James is just a green screen on my end.
Yeah. So hopefully that it will appear fine in the finished recording. But yeah, I'm not used to showing my face on camera prior to doing this podcast. And so the idea of talking to camera and presenting and learning a script, although you've kind of got it off pat now, haven't you? You kind of know it off by heart. You don't really need to read from it. But I will be a little bit more clumsy and awkward. But
it's daunting, isn't it? It's doing something you've not done before, especially when you kind of have a comfortable seat in one that you're comfortable with at the minute of, like being that kind of backwards and forwards.
I'm more of a co-host at the minute. It's kind of your show and I co-host.
No.
Well, no, it kind of is in a way, I don't want to tread on the same territory as one of our later questions, but this was kind of your baby at the beginning, really, I suppose. And we did anyway. We'll cover this territory, won't we, in the third question?
Yeah.
But when I get too much into that, but yeah, it's probably about time that I talk on a little bit more of that. I'm okay answering questions and talking to camera, but the idea of having to be quite chipper sounding at the bit. I'm normally quite a downbeat kind of person, to go. But no, I'm not depressed, but but having to talk to camera and present in a real kind of light way, like hello and welcome to the Sketchwave. It's not really my presenting style, even on my own videos.
It's not my style.
Well, but you do it well. You do it well, and so we have relied upon your natural abilities to do that. But yes, we will do a deep dive. In fact, we were talking just before we started this recording that will be the next recording that we do, won't it?
Yes, it will be.
It'll be a week after this. So whenever you're watching this, presumably you're watching soon after it's been released, there will be another episode, won't there? A week later, in which it will be definitely will be a deep dive on Joel, and we'll learn all about your history and your early experiences as an artist and your journey through onto Procreate and onto YouTube, obviously, as a teacher. So yes, we will do that. I apologize to everybody that it's taken this while. It's very much my fault, but we're gonna remedy that by next episode, aren't we? So
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it over time with YouTube, a lot of the time, especially when you start to build up and you put yourself on camera and you talk to camera and everything like that, it slowly but surely just sinks in and you just feel comfortable with it. But it is very, I imagine for so many people the thought of it just is like an absolute no way, not at all. I would never want to do that. I wouldn't even want to hear the sound of your own voice. But very quickly after a few weeks or months of doing videos, you don't care anymore. You hear your own voice and you go, yeah, fair enough. People like it, especially I reckon little things though along the journey for me, maybe, and I don't know about yourself, but have maybe sort of soothed a lot of the things, because our space of Procreate is very positive, and you don't really tend to get people being like, oh, Joel, your hair is terrible, or that is the worst mustache I've ever seen. You don't get any of that kind of personal grief. And
no,
I'll give you full reign in the comments if you want to roast me for this one particular episode. I don't mind. Maybe we'll cover them. But no, it's one. I think a lot of people over time, you hear occasionally people drop you a comment and say, I love listening to your voice in a video, you know, whatever it may be, and they find it soothing. Maybe it's the tones that we go in with when we're teaching, or the chit chat or anything like that. So I think lots of things in our space has managed to ease that a little bit, and obviously live streaming makes it a lot easier. When I used to do that, you know, you're in a room sat on your own and it's live. You don't get the chance to re-record. I mean, luckily this isn't live when we record this, so you know, any kind of blunders, which very infrequently we tend to make. I mean, occasionally we'll have like a coughing fit or anything like that, but they're just like natural things.
It'll be obvious when there's a cut, because there'll be a jar of, you know, there'll literally be a cut, won't there? It'll be very much obvious, but there's no gaps in the conversation, is there really?
No.
I mean, you do the editing, so but it does it automatically, does it? I think on the editing, it cuts out silences, doesn't it, and pauses.
Used to. We don't do that anymore in here. I do it manually. So if I'm paying attention, I'll cut it out. If not, we end up with a little bit of a slightly too long of a pause if I'm not paying attention in the.
It's not scripted, is it? I mean, apart from the intro, if the intro goes wrong, then that's redone. But we're just having a chat, aren't we? So
exactly.
You know, it's like you were sat in a room. You don't tend to, you know, need to cut out, you know, edit your own conversations, do you? So, but back to what you're saying in terms of it being a soothing thing, I think that's right. I think, you know, my early experiences of listening to my own voice, you know, very much was a negative, and I think everyone's familiar with that experience.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've, over the years, there's been tons of people saying, "Oh, you know, I love the sound of your voice," and people saying that actually they use it as an aid to get to sleep. You know, so, you know, I think that's a compliment, kind of. I suppose it's a good thing. I don't know.
If they fall asleep while your video's playing and it goes all the way through, it's 100% retention. It's a good thing.
That's it. Yeah, it's good for the algorithm, isn't it? Yeah. And if it gets them a good night's sleep, then I'm not complaining. You know.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, earlier on in my videos, there was one particular commenter that pulled me up for my mouth noises, you know, so I've been very conscious about kind of just keeping, you know, my unintended mouth noises under control. And it's amazing. You get these people, seasoned kind of radio presenters, and they develop a radio voice. I know when I listen back to my earlier videos, and they just sound completely different. I've developed more of I mean, for me, I'm still very monotone. I'm naturally a very monotone speaker, but there's a lighter cadence, and there's just more rhythm and flow in the way that I converse, even on my own tutorials now, you know. So it does change, you know.
I mean, I must admit, I feel like I'm equally going through like this extra phase at the minute of understanding that if you say something wrong in a recording, or if I'm talking and I'm like, I like to feel, and I think you do the same, but like the dead air almost, you know, I don't like the video necessarily to be silent. I want people to listen, have a chat as if they're having a chat with me while they're doing the tutorial and whatnot. But I'll often be like, oh, you know, we'll be doing such and such, and I'll be like, you know, you want to make it like this, and then I'll go, actually, no, what I mean by that is it needs to actually be this instead. And like, rather than go back and correct myself, I'm fine with it. And especially doing this a new channel, I've come to realize, like, I've kind of really, really felt like you don't need to worry about that. Like, that's not people aren't gonna hear that and turn the video off, especially in our space. Like, you want to complete the design, and I can understand, you know, if you're absolutely just waffling and it's awful to listen to and it's not really, you know, very structured, then fair enough. But it's not always like that. You can make a mistake, and I think it also makes us a bit more human. But like the other day, for example, there was a step that would have actually made the design better, which is actually part of the tutorial that you'll see in a moment towards the end, when we look back at our latest tutorials. But I just recorded a voice memo on my phone and just went, "Future Joel here. By the way, actually make sure you merge this layer and this layer together as well. It'll actually make your highlights pop even more. Silly Joel." And then I just put that in the edit, because I was like, it's not the end of the world. Like, I made a mistake. It's cool. But with this new channel, it's like I'm doing things very like almost. There's a couple of scenes where they're kind of vloggy. That I'll pick the camera up and I'll go over to that desk and be like, right, we need to look at this and we need to look at this. And it's just off the cuff and it's cool and it's just chill, and it doesn't need to be hectic. I think there's a real value sometimes in it being a bit more chill. I know we're kind of detouring a little bit.
But
what I'm getting at is like that YouTube journey never stops. And like in terms of like, your comfort, you can get more and more comfortable as you go, for sure. Just talking about deep dives, it's something that we definitely want to keep going. So I want to hear from you as the listener. If you've got any suggestions on any artists or digital artists, somewhat in the Procreate space or otherwise digital art space, please let us know in the comments down below. We had someone previously actually mentioned about Nathan Brown, who we had on the show as well for a deep dive. Awesome episode. Yeah. And if you have an artist in mind, please let us know in the comments. That'd be super appreciative. Should we move on to the next one?
Yes.
Which is a two-parter, really. Let's tackle the first part, and this is from Tony. Tony says, what is the best way to flag you in the description when posting the results of one of your tutorials? I'll bat it straight to you. What's the best way for people to get hold of you?
I have a couple of different ways. I think inevitably it's difficult to guarantee that I'm going to see every single version of it. I've got a Procreate group, Procreate Art, with James Julier, and I do scroll through it. It appears in my Facebook feed. I'm going to inevitably end up kind of doom scrolling on my phone and going through the Facebook feed. And whenever I see people's versions, I tend to operate on the basis that if it's the week within my latest tutorial, then I'll actually give a comment. I don't give kind of full critiques. It's more like just a encouraging, well done, this is great, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then anything older than that, I'll tend to give it a like, give it a thumbs up or a heart emoji. And that's the way I operate. Whenever I see someone has done my work on Facebook, then that's the way I'll do it. But then sometimes people tag me, because as well as my personal Facebook profile, which is obviously private, it's just for family and friends, I've got my page, James Julier Artist, and whenever people tag me on a post, it might be on a different Facebook group, but if they tag me and I see it, then I'll usually give them a response of some sort there.
Nice. Other
than that, it tends to be just tag me on Instagram, although I've got a little bit behind. It was easier back in the day when there weren't so many versions and I could just keep a regular check on it now. And I'm a little bit guilty sometimes of letting them stockpile and then go through 300 at once, and I have to really, I'd like to say I have enough time to really give it the full depth, but I do see them. So yeah, either kind of tag me on Instagram, and it has to be a tag.
Yes,
otherwise I won't
not a
see
mention.
It. No, if it's a
worth
mention,
clarifying the difference, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people do sort of blend them together.
Yeah,
a mention is when you when you're writing the caption of the post. So you're writing, I just finished this James Julier post, and you put at James Julier.
Yeah,
that's a mention. But it's best to tag us in it, because that goes into the tagged tab on our profiles, and we can just filter straight through it.
It's gone, isn't it? If you don't notice it on your
it gets
feed,
lost in comments.
It's gone, yeah.
So
yes, tag me on Instagram or tag us on Instagram. Otherwise, other than that, it's the Facebook group. I'm not sure of any other places that I would actually notice. How about yourself?
I've got a very similar kind of processes. I've got a Facebook group as well, which people can join and post anything they want in there that's Procreate related. And again, I'll do a very similar process. I'll go on Facebook, I'll have a look, and most of the time you can mention us on Facebook and it comes into the notifications. It's a lot easier to see it. That's fine. And also, you can tag me. I'm in lots of Facebook groups as well, like for example, Procreate for beginners and so on, and Procreate tutorials. If you post in there, you put at JoelCreate on Facebook, for example, and I'll be there and I'll see it. And it's awesome to see. Otherwise, sometimes you kind of rely on the fact it will pop up in the home page kind of algorithm and mention it and put it in front of you. Otherwise, you miss it. So, there's and I'll always like the ones that I see for sure. And a similar kind of process. I think we actually get tagged in a huge amount of content. And in the early days, for me especially, it was very easy for me to literally just keep checking it. But with everything that you have going on in life, and not only that, it's like, I hit a point at one point, I'll derail for just a second and come back to the question, but I hit a point where I actually had to get a second phone because I couldn't stop. Like, we were out on a Saturday shopping, and like, while the missus is just walking around, looking, and I'm sort of stood in the bloke section by the front door or on the sofas or whatever it is, I'm just checking, what I've been tagged in, or checking YouTube Studio, actually. And I had to get a second phone for us, it's very tricky, like when you post your tutorial, you're refreshing every hour. You're trying to see if it's doing well or doing badly.
Yeah.
But it makes no difference if you do that or not, to the video. So like you could put it away, put it down and just leave it and let it be. You did your work, you put it out there and you let it be.
Do you not log into your kind of like art Instagram on your primary phone then? Is it only on the second phone?
So I had it. It was a good experiment for me, because what happened, I think I'm starting to understand myself a little bit more with these practices. But I understand by doing that and creating that separation, I was completely logged out of all of the JoelCreate stuff on my personal phone, out and about.
Good idea.
And it was great, because you weren't. And I need to explain kind of why, because I don't want it to come across negative, because it's not intended in that way at all. I love to see people's finished work, and I think the quicker I can get to that and let them know, hopefully while they're still on their phone, and be like, that was awesome, love what you did, fantastic work. I want to show my appreciation for you finishing my work, my tutorial, and I want to see your work. So, but that's very, it almost felt kind of like social networky, kind of dangerous at the same time, because it was like, got to get to it. And it was like, ding, check. And it was too much. It got really overwhelming. So I moved it all onto the second phone. Sorry.
And also it probably makes you, because I know whenever I go on Facebook, if I go on Facebook or Instagram, if I'm going on specifically to do the work, that's fine. I'm not going to get distracted with things that are personal. Or if I go on personal, then I'm not going to get distracted with work thing. But then when you're not really clear about which it is you're doing, then you can end up spending and wasting a load of time doing the thing that you shouldn't be doing. you know, so it's nice to have a clear division. It's a good idea.
So I think what happened is then I moved it onto the second phone. It was working perfectly. A very healthy balance of everything, like mentally and stuff like that. And then that phone started to get very slow, because I just bought, I think it was one of my mum's old phones even. Like she upgraded to a new phone and I said, I'll take yours off. It was an iPhone XR, I think it was. I still got it, and it just started to slow a little bit too much. And then I moved the stuff back to my regular phone. But because I'd broken the cycle, I don't do it anymore, like in the same way. So I'm not checking like I was before. Okay. And it's far, far healthier. But I mean, between me and you, like, in terms of the topic wise, I think, if that's something you thought about or consider, like, would consider being healthy or a good thing, I would definitely do it. Because especially if you get an iPhone and you work with an iPhone and an iPad already, you can just airdrop it across anyway. There's no barriers to like your content in any way. So, if you need to send a photo from your iPad to your work phone, it's great. But you can pick one up pretty cheap as well. They just brought out the new iPhone SE, for example, which, it's got the latest chip and would last you a while, but it doesn't have all the cameras because you don't need all the cameras kind of thing for that. Anyway,
it's like 600 quid though, isn't it? 500 quid still. It's not that cheap.
It's not that cheap,
no.
So that's what happened with me. So where did I get to? Sorry. So Facebook and stuff, I will check it as well in the same way. Tag me on Instagram. That's a really good way of me seeing it. And you can also share your work in my Discord as well. But it's not just my work. You can share people share tutorials of yours, James, Flo, Tati, and so on. Like all of every Procreate tutor's work is in there, and people sharing in the feed. And it's great because it's among the community. If I don't see it, the community see it, which is really quite nice and rewarding, because there's some wonderful people in there that are super positive and super happy just to see work and your creation. So that's probably about it. I mean, on Patreon, I did open up the chats feature recently. So patrons can share their work to other patrons in a feed. But I think that's it. I think they're roughly TikTok. You can tag me, but I very rarely go on my JoelCreate TikTok simply because I have a bit of an unhealthy relationship with it. So that's it on that one. But the second part of this question, which I think is really interesting, is, have you ever considered, and this is again from Tony again. Have you ever considered offering a way to get commercial license to use drawings created from your tutorials on physical products? Your tutorials are so great and people see them and would love to have it on like a mug, keyring, etc. Talk me through your kind of thoughts about that question.
I'm a bit unclear exactly what it means, really. Does it mean that the people that have done our tutorials, it would give them
so I think I think they could come to you and say, James, I finished this tutorial. Could I buy a commercial license so I can put this onto physical products? Let's not get too technical in terms of like how that logistically works and splits and everything like that. I mean, you can do if you want to talk about how that would work, but I
kind of assumed anyone that wanted to do that. I mean, if we're talking about a large enterprise, someone selling thousands of copies of something on some format, but do you imagine that happens? I didn't imagine that happens. I know we get quite a large number of people that do the tutorials, but I didn't really envisage that it would be something that could be sold commercially necessarily. I mean, I just tell people that if they followed my tutorial and they want to print it and they want to use it in some capacity, then go for it for the most part. I just think people should do what they want.
Personally or for like business?
I don't know how we would know about it, for one thing, unless it becomes huge, and then maybe that becomes another issue then. But I guess it's the ones... I'm trying to think of a scenario where it would become like that. I mean, if I started noticing my designs were on mugs within a shop, then that would be an entirely different matter.
Yeah.
But if someone is making a small run of T-shirts or something like that and they're selling it to a relatively small audience, I wouldn't even get to hear about it. Most
but
likely,
say you
anyway.
did though. Say let's set an example then. I think because I want to understand where the kind of line would fall with you. If somebody had taken one of your tutorials and put it onto Canvas and was selling it, let's say 50 quid, big nice canvas size, and they'd sold 1,000 of them. What was your thoughts on that?
I would be impressed, more than anything. I mean, I wouldn't be able to help myself but be impressed and congratulate them for such an achievement. I think selling digital canvases is not easy. I mean,
but it's your artwork.
Yes, and I find that a difficult one to give a distinct answer on, really. I mean, part of me just doesn't believe that there's that much of a market to do so. Maybe I'm naive in that. Maybe people are already doing that and cashing in. I've gone down that road a little bit with my personal work, and it never really took off. I guess it's a little bit too niche. Maybe the stuff that we do for tutorials it is broad enough in its appeal that it could potentially, I suppose. But I've never really seen it as an avenue for myself personally, even. So I'm a little bit kind of jaded with the selling digital work, at least. Anyway, I mean, I do it for the enjoyment of it, and teaching it is one thing, executing it is another, but then the selling of it just for a pure image sake, because let's be real, I think anyone can get a canvas printed with any image they find on the internet. You find a reasonably high resolution image of anything, you can get it printed onto a canvas yourself, and you don't necessarily need to go to somebody else to have something printed. If someone can get a copy of our image, they can just go and print it for themselves for $20-$30, say. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, I'm a little unclear, as you can probably tell, what I feel about it.
I'm quite a lot more definitive over it. Like, the copyright is your own as the creator, and they're there for educational purposes only, for me. However, I've had people be like, love the design so much, I print it out and put it on a canvas in my room.
Yeah.
Totally on board with that. That is fine by me. It's more the fact, if you then go, right, well, I'm gonna have 1,000 of these made and I'm gonna sell them. onwards, when that clear copyright is in place in the description. It's in the description of majority of every Procreate creator's descriptions as well, based on the fact that, again, it is for educational purposes only. For me, it's like again, yeah, if you do it for personal and it's just like you made yourself a keyring for your keys, or you made yourself a mug and so on, cool, I love that. In fact, if anything, I encourage that. That's amazing. That when I see that stuff, it tells me that you loved it so much you took it to the next level. I am on board with that. If you then go against the kind of the even exchange that we have as I'm the tutor and you're the student who's taking part in this online course for half an hour on YouTube, and then you're taking it, and all the restrictions are there in that sense, and then you're saying, I'm not going to follow those restrictions and I'm going to go and do it. That to me doesn't make that fair exchange anymore, because you are now taking the work that I've put in, the time behind the scenes before that video was ever made, to then create something cool for you and use my imagination and give you guys something interesting to watch and create. And then you've taken that and then selling it as, I don't know, I'm going to use Tony here as an example, Tony's merchandisestore.com, and there's like, all of the designs that they've done. For me, I feel like it's not very kind of ethical in that sense. However, let's follow the question. If someone said to me, Joel, I really, if anything, they'd have to come to me with this kind of almost business proposal and be like, I think this particular design would do so well. And I'm going to give like a couple of examples. I think it would do so well as a canvas, and I'd love to sell it on my online store that's on Etsy, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I say, okay, let's just talk it through. And maybe it could be like a matter of, fair enough, if you sell out up to 100, all yours. If it starts to really snowball after that, let's have another conversation and just see about like some sort of online, business plan together, because I'm the curator and you're the producer in the business. But then I think, if somebody came to you and was like, I work for IKEA and I want to put this on a canvas. Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a licensing deal, because there's so many examples of licensing deals. Like if you can create a repeating pattern that is wallpaper worthy, you can sell that online. And when I say wallpaper, I'm talking physical, like on wall wallpaper. Yeah. And Dunelm will snap that up. I promise you, it's a genuine real world thing that you can create these designs, sell them on I can't remember the website off the top of my head, but it's like a marketplace for that type of thing. And they love it. They go in there, I think, to the point where you have to have some sort of level of catalogue and criteria met in terms of like social presence potentially, or something like that. But just like so that you are like a professional and not just you've got a little bit more in terms of a professional background and so on, and understand the business side to it. Sure. So yeah, there's like those examples. So for me, wrapping it back to the question, if you're doing it for personal, no problem at all. I absolutely love it. If you go and just do it without asking for like your own stores and stuff, I find that quite shady, because again, that fair exchange. But I mean, I totally understand what you're saying and on your side, and I don't think necessarily either of us are right or wrong necessarily. No. I think, but that's my viewpoint, and I think, I think
it's a scale issue.
Conversation.
I think it's a scale issue. I think if they did a run of 10 and they sold it in a little craft fair in some town in the world, I mean, we'd never hear about it, and I think good luck to you. But if it becomes a serious commercial enterprise where there's serious money involved, then but it's a difficult one to police, isn't it? And if we were to hear of it, then maybe we'd have something to say of it. If that's someone's intention, then I think they probably should approach us with that intention and explain it, and then we can make that decision on that basis, couldn't we? Yeah.
It's also hard to tiptoe around the question without it sounding as if to say, well, if you're going to make an absolute ton of money, then we need to be splitting that.
We want a piece.
It's a really difficult one to try and sort of word without being like, no, if you're going to make any money off my work, it's my money. It's a horrible kind of, money's just a horrible thing to try and talk about in the first place. But again, if you wrap it all the way back to the beginning, we made a YouTube video, we made a design that we wanted to teach you how to draw. Yeah. That's the exchange, and that's where it kind of comes to an end. Yeah. But there have been people in the past, that have taken content from people and from other tutors and put it onto these types of sites, and I've seen them absolutely get pulled down ASAP by the creator, and the people just didn't know. So it's always worth asking. And even on this commercial side of it, again, if you came to me and said, Joe, I've got an idea for this, I'll listen to you. I'll absolutely listen. But yeah, it's just worth definitely checking in for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think we covered everything in that one? I don't think there's anything left on the table there.
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah.
Awesome. Which I also want to cover, Tony. I appreciate the love as well by saying which both of your tutorials are absolutely fantastic. So I appreciate the support, Tony.
Yeah, thank you.
We both do. Let's answer then the last question before we start to take a look at our previous tutorials in the last week. The final question here is, how did Joel and James meet? Maybe you've mentioned this already and I missed it. Thank you for all you do. I value your work and thoroughly enjoy your show. Look forward to it weekly. And that's from Sam. It's a couple of years ago now, isn't it?
Yes, I'm not entirely clear on the date. I think you briefly looked back, didn't you, for the date on your. I think initially was it a comment or a message that you sent to me, espousing the kind of the virtues of reels on Instagram rather than just ordinary posts, which is really helpful. And I haven't necessarily followed it, but I did try a few reels. I did for a little while, and I just found it was a bit too much effort for the level of reward. In my personal case, I know reels have been something really successful for you, haven't they, over the years, and on Instagram. But for me, they kind of fizzled a little bit, and in terms of the time put in, I didn't feel it was something I wanted to carry on with. But yeah, that's how we first communicated, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just me seeing that James was only posting the image of his finished tutorial. And I said, hey, James, hope you're good. I think there's a lot of value to maybe be said to making your tutorial videos really short and snappy into like a time-lapse kind of Instagram short form video. And we had a little bit of a conversation backwards and forwards about that, didn't we?
Which I really appreciated you reaching out. And so, because a lot of people, they see it as a kind of, this is my thing and I'm going to do what I can to make myself successful, and I'm not going to share any thoughts in a positive way. And I really appreciated that kind of, reaching out and trying to offer some insight and help in an area that perhaps I hadn't explored.
I think also for me back then, it would have been, was that it was October 2022. Yeah. So like for me, I think I would have been like, oh, I don't want James to think I'm trying to tell him how to run his business here or like his YouTube channel or anything like that. Like, oh God, this could go down the wrong way. But yeah, no, it started just a conversation of backwards and forwards. And I think very quickly I said, James, didn't we? I can't remember how we did this, but we ended up just jumping on a Google Meet and having a chat and just talking all things YouTube, didn't we, for a little while, which we took a screenshot of, I remember, and we put it on Instagram stories and people absolutely loved it. I remember posting it in my Discord and they were like, wow, this is a collab I want to see.
Because it didn't necessarily have the intention of the Sketchwave right away, did we? We must have had a video chat and but not necessarily the Sketchwave in mind initially. It was just having a chat, wasn't it, about potentially doing some kind of collab work in the future, but not defined as anything at that point.
So in April 2023, I then sent you another message saying, I wondered if you'd like to do a collaboration style video together. So this wasn't even Sketchwave at that point. No. This was just like, do you want to do a YouTube video where we both make a YouTube video for our own channels, but much like our time challenge that we did a couple of weeks ago. That's exactly what it would have been, where I'd have created like a sketch for you and you'd have then drawn something and maybe even hand it back to me again. Yeah. But we would have separate videos on our own channels kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I think...
Could work, but I feel like we have a format here now, don't we? It's kind of...
Yeah.
It's kind of been boiled down to this project, hasn't it? Instead.
It has.
And I don't remember exactly. You probably have. You've got the record in front of you there, haven't you? You've got kind of transcripts of our dialogue, but I don't know. I don't remember at which point initially it came from you. I think the idea of a podcast. It definitely came from you, because it would not have come from me initially, being a bit sort of camera shy. Yeah, you
So
came
I
with the
proposed
idea.
it. Yeah, I proposed it. So we had a chat in May 2023, which was just us talking YouTube to each other, because we could talk
Yeah.
YouTube for hours and just talk all sorts of analytics that no one's interested in. But we had a chat, and that was the one which we screenshot. So that was like a little while later. That was in May of 2023. Right. So that's a good few months later. And then, I'd already proposed the idea of like a collaboration. And then, to be honest, it's just a lot of backwards and forwards for a while of, just like, love what you did with the video and so, whatnot. And like, doing really well this week, or see you doing really well this week, and vice versa. Or like, I'd occasionally just message and say, what do you think of this, this kind of idea? We had also another point in which I mentioned about, I think you need to adjust your chapters in your comments. You need to change the first one in your comments so that it actually then chapters it along the timeline bar for people as well. So it's just these little things, and like sending each other the Procreate new like announcement kind of video as well, and dreams and whatnot. And I think we spoke about that a little bit, because I asked whether or not you were going, but I was on my honeymoon anyway, so I was never coming back just to do that. That it would have been over before it even started, kind of thing. But it wasn't until, I can't really get there very quickly here by the looks of it, but I think it was very early last year, wasn't it, where I brought it back up, because I thought about the concept a bit longer and thought, I think I've always, again, forgive me if I'm also repeating myself, I've always thought in our space, based on how the tutors interact with each other, how the audience interacts with each other, that there is space for collaboration. And I think it was missing. And I feel like we're covering a good ground in it, but it would be, can you imagine how awesome it would be as well for, like, let's say Flo and Tatty to have a show together, for example, it's just off the top of my head, but like, and another kind of like collaboration style video among tutors kind of thing. It'd be amazing. And I think there's so much space in our space for that type of collaboration, because you see YouTubers, very big YouTubers, will sort of collab with each other on a podcast, whatever it may be, and they get together and they just co-host and have a chat and then bring in other people as well. So it's kind of that philosophy here, where we are here every week, but we'll bring in guests, we'll do time chat, we'll do challenges and stuff like that. So I had the idea, and I was like, I think this has got legs. And it took a while, didn't it? Because I think, as you've mentioned already in this episode, it's about, I did say it's going to be video, we'll be on video and we'll be talking and to camera. Like, how do you feel about that? And he just hung up on me, and that was it. And I thought, it took a while, didn't it, to sort of get the ball rolling in that sense.
And then there was a lot of, we had to make decisions about just even the name of the channel. I mean, we must have had a list of about 30 different names, didn't we? Some bizarre ones. But then the logo as well,
Yeah. Backwards and forwards on all of this stuff behind the scenes before. I'm trying to see if we have any of the names. We don't have them anymore. We had some really interesting names, but so many of them were taken. We couldn't pick a lot of them, sadly.
The Conversation was one I was quite proud of. The Canvas-ation, in case that wasn't clear enough.
What was it again?
Canvas-ation.
Oh yes, got it. Yeah.
It was a difficult one to say, though, we decided, didn't we? It was just a bit weird sounding when you actually say it. So, yeah.
But then, we started cracking on with the sketch wave. I was going away on holiday, I think it was in like April last year. So we sort of quite quickly said, well, why don't we just record like 3 episodes, 2 back to back and another one the next day, and get them all edited, get them up, get them ready to go, and then do it from there. So that's how we got to here. But at the beginning, it's just kind of like created sort of chatter backwards and forwards. And I think in other spaces, people would maybe read those messages and be like, leave me alone. I don't need any help doing what I'm doing, kind of thing. But again, it's the same, I can recall like sending Flow messages and, asking questions and whatnot. She's always giving me the time of day, which is amazing. And, I think the space in general just is such a great space that there's so much opportunity to do it.
I don't think it's the kind of environment where you can be too ego driven anyway. I think you have to be able to. I think you have to communicate with people that are following and want feedback and to be there available to give advice and take their feedback on board as well to actually improve your channel. It's not like, here I'm an expert and blah, 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 and all you have to do is listen to me. It's not, it's been more of a, I know for me personally anyway, it's certainly been a backwards and forwards with the audience. And so we're a lot more maybe open to that dialogue with our followers and people that do the tutorials perhaps than other formats might be.
Yeah, definitely.
We're not necessarily just standing on a pedestal and telling everyone that we know everything, because we're evolving as artists too, aren't we? I think that we're on a journey, and we just happen to be on a journey where we're growing as teachers, and we're learning along the way too how to do that better.
Teachers and artists, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, definitely.
And we have to cover so many different things as well. We can't help but learn to do things in different ways and whatnot. So, if you were a creator in any space, I would always urge you to reach out and collaborate with other people. And it is daunting. Sending James a message. I think at the time you would have probably been about. You definitely over 250,000. So I would imagine maybe 300 to 400. As a creator that's a tenth of the size, you think, but it's always worth doing it. And before you know it, you're sat having a weekly show and we're having a natter and we're going from there. So it's always worth just having a chat with the people in your space, no matter what kind of spaces you're in.
Yeah.
We spoke about, we're constantly learning different things. And I sort of segue potentially into the fact that I've been messing with charcoals lately.
Yes.
And my latest YouTube video, which is a little duckling tutorial.
Cute. Yeah.
Very cute. Is a full charcoal design. This is so interesting to do, these charcoals, because it goes through a horrific ugly stage. Like there's ugly stages and a lot of work, but these are. It's more the fact you start with like a light grey wash, then you get into like covering the majority of it with like a slightly darker grey, but also trying to accommodate for the flow of the feathers, etc. And then you go in with black on top, so there's still no shape, there's no definition, there's no detailing. You just end up with this really blobby looking duckling. And it only comes together at the end when you merge. You merge all the greys and blacks together, and you are erasing from that layer. So all you're doing is revealing the background. So you're not drawing with white; you're just erasing from it, and that's the only time the sharpness comes into it. So it goes through this really grey, black, no definition, no shape, no structure necessarily. Not too much. There is structure there, but it's not. It's not very nice and detailed to think, oh, I'm really progressing here. You really have to trust the process and like lay those foundations in and get through it to the end. But it flies together though at the same time. Like, and then when you start seeing all these sharp details come in, for me, I love it. It's really cool.
The little hairs.
Like the hairs, and then like sharpening the eye and the beak specifically in this one. But the duckling itself is nice and fluffy to the point where you don't need to. You can be quite exaggerating with like these fluffy lines that are the early bird feathers kind of thing. And I loved it. This photo was one that was on a royalty-free website, and it's one of those ones where you sketch across if you want to, and then go from there and start adding it in. I've got one that comes out this week on YouTube but it's by the time people are watching this, it's already out, so it doesn't matter, but it's like a goldfish version of another charcoal design. But that one I skipped the sketch phase because I just didn't want people doing it too much. If they want to, they can do that. If they watched this one and understood the process, more than welcome to do it, but I skipped it in the next one. So
it's lovely. It's a really nice piece. I think that working in grayscale and just concentrating on the tone and the texture and that kind of look of it I think is really effective, isn't it? It's not something I've done for my channel. Maybe I don't want to step on your toes, but maybe at some point I will. But it's really lovely. I think it really is. And I think with those little sharp hair details, little fluffy sort of textures on it, I think that it has that clarity of a kind of photographic look that really works. It's really nice.
But it's still kind of like nice and scribbly in some areas and just really easy and just like, I say easy. It's just really, when I say easy, I mean as in quite loose at the same time is what I mean. It's like easy in terms of the thought process of it. It's just like chuck it in and see what happens. There's only one kind of Procreatified moment in here, and that's just before doing the water ripples on the ground. It's just reflecting, taking a selection of the duckling and flipping it upside down. So that's the only kind of bit necessarily in there that doesn't then follow the process. I mentioned was it the last show we did about how in this you can set a gesture up in Procreate that you can smudge only with your finger. So if you draw with the pencil, you're drawing, and then you get your finger and you smudge at the same time, and it knows it's a smudge, not a pen. So it feels very realistic. So you can be drawing and then just very lightly just rubbing on the screen to smudge. It's so fun, and when you're doing something like charcoals, it feels kind of realistic and kind of traditional at the same time. So I've got another one coming out. I just didn't want to stop. So let's move on to your YouTube video. Is this YouTube and extended, or is this just YouTube?
Just YouTube. It's not the extended version. I tend to do that on a Wednesday or Thursday.
Gotcha.
So this was I'm still kind of it's not really spring proper here yet in the UK. We're getting little hints of it, aren't we? You get the odd sunny day kind of.
Yeah, my daffodils are flying, mate. It's spring.
It's still cold, isn't it? And I'm waiting for warmer weather, and I can't wait really my tutorials, but to kind of spring forward with leafy looking trees and proper green sunny landscape. So this was another one, and I wanted to add something that was structural in there. I've done how many bridges have I done? I think I've only done one bridge. It was a different kind of colour scheme on the other one. It was greens, but it wasn't so sunny. It was more of a misty setting for the other bridge that I've done. Slightly different kind of environment for it. So I wanted to do something that was quite vibrant and had that kind of, although all the trees have leaves, it has that sense of new light and a new beginning kind of feel to it, even if it's not strictly speaking spring. But I enjoyed doing this one. I thought that I enjoyed doing the bridge. I did that as just like a dark silhouette initially, and then on a separate layer, I just did the blobs of the stones. And then with alpha lock on, or maybe clipping mask, I did it and just went over it with the charcoal brush, just to add a little bit of texture into those stones. So it was a really easy technique, really, but it was quite effective despite being easy. And I enjoyed doing that. I did have a little bit trouble with the water. Sometimes because I don't tend to practice the tutorial ahead of time, I look at an area like that and think, not a problem, I'll be able to do that. And then when it comes to the recording of it, it's like, damn, I'm really struggling with this one. I did that one about 4 times over before I got it to that point.
Foreground area.
The sparkles on the water and ripples and sparkles on water sometimes can just happen, and you find that, I think it was the colour that I wasn't quite satisfied with that one. I think if I was to do that again, because I was using the light pen in luminance, and it can distort the colours a little bit, and I felt like I had the right colour ahead of time, and then it didn't quite cooperate in the way that I was imagining when I actually started to apply it. And it's still fine, but I imagined that was going to be easier than it ended up being, because I'd done like a little stream one with lots of stones in the water. Was it last week or the week before? And that one just seemed to fall together in a way that just like, that really works. And then I tried to do something with this one that had a similar-ish element, and I thought it was going to work in the same way, and it didn't. There's other elements of that I was really happy with, but I struggled with that one, and I had to re-record that element several times. But that's the way it goes, isn't it? We're still all on our own learning curve, aren't we? So.
Absolutely. This summarizes something you said before about tutorials, that when you want to get to kind of spring, but you've mentioned it at the end of the year, you wanted to give people a design that sort of invoked maybe hope kind of thing. And this to me kind of summarizes that, like, spring is around the corner. Things are going to get lighter. It's going to get prettier. It's going to get more alive. And this summarizes that, I think, for me. It just gives that exact impression, which is lovely. It's very nice. And but again, it's the difference here is that the cool tones in this particular week's tutorial and the warm tones, they're very close together in a way. They're not very like blue and then orangey, reddy kind of color tones. They're closer together. You've got yellow and green, so they're a little bit tighter. So it's almost like They're not, and I love it because I think you've also got the contrast change of color scheme in the brickwork as well. You know, the stone, of the bridge. So it just adds an extra something that's not then so.
If it weren't for the bridge, you would have needed a more of a color contrast, I think, in the rest.
Maybe
of it.
like a bit more blue, in the water or something. But because it doesn't need it though. At the same time, like when I look at this, it's just so pretty and just lovely to look at, and the sparkles on the water are fantastic. It's yeah, it's awesome. The way you manage to do it at the minute, these sort of very short kind of waterfalls over the ledges are very, very cool. They're almost like that milkiness you get from doing a time lapse of water. It always looks like that.
Exposure kind of photo.
Long exposure. That was it. It's it's fantastic. It looks awesome, and all the details as well in the greenery on the left hand side. Are you utilising the smudge in here of that right hand side? I'm assuming there with the sort of, I can see like reeds of grass almost.
Yeah. The smudge is really useful. I did anticipate doing more grass and more plants and things. It's going to be in the extended one, and maybe even more stones in the side elements there as well. But yeah, because I struggled so much with the actual the ripples in the water and the sparkles, it ended up being it is what it is, and then save extra details for the extended one. So yeah.
Lovely. Awesome. Well, let's switch from something that looks very nice and hopeful and positive and bright and bubbly to something that's a little bit more almost dark. Well, it is dark, but it's a lightning tutorial that I made that's on Patreon. It's like my idea is like completely dead of night potentially, and the flash of the lightning is brightening up the whole landscape, and it's like a quick burst of light, whereas potentially the whole scene is maybe dark anyway, because there's no like light source in this at all other than that. I haven't done a lightning tutorial before, and it was just kind of fun just to mess around with kind of a new focal point and a new subject matter almost, and then implement all the landscape stuff in the same way that you would normally do, but with a focal light source that's a little bit different. So blurring out the foreground's very inspired, I think, by some of your content, I think.
Did you use the light pen for the lightning? Was that the brush you used, or was it another?
It was a random drawing brush, and then just bloomed on top. I think it was an ad layer maybe on the top of it, and then bloomed as well. The bloom is
really good, isn't it?
Yeah. The clouds then above. Yeah, it's just clouds with a little bit of. No, I think it's clouds and. I don't know whether or not it was the rainforest brush or not. I think it was clouds brought down very, very small, but it might have been rainforest. I can't really remember. I definitely used the rainforest brush for the texture in there. It does. Yeah, of the hillsides on the left and right hand side. Because the way I listen to what you say about it, and the way it kind of spreads out, but also can layer on top of each other. It creates this real granular kind of detail look to it. Yeah. And for hills in the distance that are not very well lit or anything like that, I just wanted to kind of show that there is like divots and unevenness to the texture of the landscape. The foreground was a real concoction of all sorts of stuff. I think it was like leatherwood brush, maybe even Evolve, and Studio Pen and dry ink. There was quite a few of them, but I love telling people, don't worry about it. We're going to blur it in a minute. Just honestly, do not worry about it at all. It'll look fantastic. Just add in your highlights, add in some shadows, be a bit kind of destructive in a way by adding then some shadows on top of all your highlights. Because people, I know I do. I go from base color all the way through to highlights, and then I'll add so leaving space for shadows, but I maybe add too much kind of like green tone or mid tone or whatever it is. Yeah. And then I'll go, I need to be more destructive and sacrificial. So I'll go back in and just really kind of cut away to create harsh shadows and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's cool.
Looks great.
I think it's quite
really dramatic.
It's dramatic, kind of soft at the same time, because the water's got very little to it. It's just a bit of a gradient to it. Yeah. But yeah, had fun. That's all that matters, isn't it? And it's all about sort of creating different styles every week, that you try to do something a little bit different. Yeah. But the rules are somewhat similar in a sense, That could be a sun, or it could be that could be a moon, and it would be exactly the same design almost. Yeah. Just a moon in the sky that's super bright and some stars up there. Could have added some stars maybe, but then it would have got
too cloudy, really, isn't it? Yeah,
too cloudy. need that kind of stormy look to it. So there we go. There's a look back at our latest releases of tutorials. So yeah, if you have enjoyed this episode, let's put a lightning bolt in the comments down below. So I know you made it right to the very end. While you're down there, if you could subscribe to this channel if you're already not, and check out the join button as well. Get early access to the show when you become a member of the channel. You also get a loyalty badge beside your name that grows over time, and you can have fun with the other members as well in the comments on our episodes as early releases. We see the comments in there a week early, and I'm thinking, I always for some reason I think to myself, wait, if I hit publish on that by accident? And it's like, no, it's members, it's early access. They're allowed to have this. I always forget. So if you want to get early access to the show, again, hit the join button down below. James, thank you as always for an awesome conversation. No pressure, but hosting next week.
You're right.
We'll see you then. Bye bye for now.